Hello everyone, good morning and welcome back to Sports Today. We bring you this video segment every single morning to help you catch up on things that you might have missed out on whilst you were catching up on some rest. Because let's face it, whilst you and I might sleep, the world of sport doesn't really sleep. So without any further ado, let's quickly get to some of the things that have been making news. And let's start off with the fact that there's a video that's been put out by the BCCI in which Gautam Gambhir, the head coach, was talking about what he liked about the team in the ODI against Australia and even overall in the series. And whilst talking about what he enjoyed watching, he did give a special mention to Rohit Sharma and Virat Kohli. Of course, the Roko Jodi played a very key part in India winning the third ODI. It was a consolation win, but still a win is a win. You take it. And Gambhir said that it was outstanding to watch the two veterans bat together, and it was a very crucial partnership that helped guide India home. Now, of course, his words will be over scrutinized given the fact that there is talk that, there has been talk even prior to this series that Rohit and Kohli are pretty much non-certainties at this point for the World Cup. That yes, whilst they may be available, they haven't been guaranteed spots, and the fact is that there's been a thought process among fans at least that they are sort of on trial. Of course, that has been debunked by AajTak, the chairman of selectors, but it hasn't really stopped the unease around both these players. So to hear the head coach say something like that, even if it's on something that is essentially produced by the BCCI, is encouraging nevertheless. News number 2, and this is one who certain cricket fans would really like enjoying to hear this one. Prithvi Shaw has registered his first Ranji Trophy ton for new side Maharashtra. Now, obviously, it's a big thing for multiple reasons. One, it comes after him having a duck in his debut match for Maharashtra, not the best of starts for what he would have hoped would be a new chapter, and of course a renewed push to making an India comeback. Of course, this Maharashtra ton which came in 72 balls, history making in some ways because it is the 6th fastest century in Ranji Trophy history. Of course, Shaw will need a lot more than just the one-off ton here or there. He'll need consistent performances in a bid to actually stake a claim for a place in the Indian team, but it's a good start nevertheless. And now switching our focus, or continuing focus, but switching formats really, continuing on about, let's say, the ODI or the T20 series. There's a news for Australia in the sense that Tanveer Sangha has been called up to the Australia squad as a replacement for Adam Zampa. The reason for that is that Zampa's wife is pregnant, and so Zampa has pulled out of this particular series, and Sangha has been named as his replacement. A like for like in some ways, but given the way Zampa was troubling the Indian batters during the ODI series, one can't help but feel that it is a little bit of a downgrade. Sure, Sangha is a good player, but he isn't quite at Zampa's level yet. But it'll be interesting to see how it is that this impacts Australia in the T20 series. Remember, India, whilst they're a good ODI side, are also the defending T20 World Cup champions, so will come in with a lot of confidence. And the last T20 series, if you could call it that, or the last T20 games they played, of course, the Asia Cup, where they ended up emerging victorious. So there is, of course, that to keep in mind as well. It's a team full of confidence. More cricketing news, this time Australia related, but down to the Ashes. Pat Cummins has now officially been ruled out of the first test against Australia. It had been rumoured for quite some time, and even Cummins himself had come out and said that he's unlikely to be playing the first test. But now it's been confirmed. Cricket Australia have confirmed two things. One, that Steve Smith will be captaining the side in Cummins' absence, and two, that his replacement will most likely be Scott Boland, although neither of these two things should be a big surprise given we know how obvious it was really. It was something everyone could have seen coming from a mile away. Still, the absence of a Cummins will impact Australia in some ways. It'll be interesting to see how. But if Australia can do just fine without him, then it'll be a very good news for them and their fans in the Ashes. More news now, cricketing related, but this time around the ICC Women's World Cup, and security in Navi Mumbai has been ramped up significantly for the upcoming fixtures, especially the India-Australia fixture. Why exactly is that the case? Well, there was that unfortunate incident whereby 2 Australian cricketers were molested by a passerby or someone who was practically stalking them, and obviously that is something that has raised a lot of concern. So there has been a higher deployment of security personnel for this particular match. Understandably, the authorities would want to avoid an incident of similar nature taking place, because again, it's just not a good look no matter how it is you want to try and spin it. Switching our focus now from the world of cricket to the world of football, and Real Madrid fans rejoice. You ended up beating Barcelona 2-1 in the first League El Clasico of the season. It was a very good win. Kylian Mbappe and Jude Bellingham scoring the goals in the first half that ensured Real Madrid end up winning the first El Clasico of the league season. Of course, it is also worth noting that the win comes in the backdrop of some pretty, let's say some interesting rage baiting from Lamine Yamal. He had been taunting Real fans before the weekend. He'd been posting stories on Instagram, ended up having a rather anonymous game, Yamal, but of course he wasn't the only one. Barca in general had a very off day and the defense was looking very porous. They conceded 4 times in the first half, but 2 of those were ruled out for offside. But that in itself tells you just how poor they were while defending and how clinical Real Madrid were when it came to taking their chances. More football news, and this time from the Premier League. Arsenal registered a 1-0 win over Crystal Palace, courtesy a goal of former Palace boy Eberechi Eze. Now, of course, Eze chose not to celebrate the goal, given he's literally just left Palace this year, and he had a very fruitful time at the South London-based club. But the win also ensures that Arsenal are now 6 points clear at the top of the Premier League table, having only conceded 3 goals in the first 9 games of the season. Very impressive start for the Gunners, but as recent seasons have shown, it is not so much how they start, it's more about how they actually end up finishing, because whilst they have been strong starters, they have not quite been able to sustain that momentum later on into the season. Of course, they will be helped by the fact that their 2 nearest title rivals, Liverpool and Man City, both suffered losses this week, which brings me to the next point of news. Manchester City were consigned to a 1-0 defeat by Aston Villa. Now, Aston Villa's Matty Cash was the one who got the only goal on the night, but it does reinforce the fact that City this season haven't quite looked the same team that they have in recent seasons. Remember, this was a side that in 5 years ended up winning 4 league titles, and it was truncated by just 1 Liverpool win in the 2019-20 season. So from those highs to be playing a team or playing the way they are now, where they're pretty much just reliant on Erling Haaland to score their goals, and that's really it. It does seem like this is a team that are very much redeveloping and trying to find a new identity, and that identity unfortunately hasn't been found yet. What that does is that, given Liverpool are also struggling, Arsenal actually have a very clear run to the title if they can remain consistent. Switching focus now, and a couple bit focus on other sporting news before we wrap it up. Lando Norris won the Mexican Grand Prix, the Formula 1 race that was taking place this weekend, in very dominant fashion. Charles Leclerc of Ferrari finished second, and Red Bull's Max Verstappen, the defending world champion, came in third, but it was a dominant drive from Lando. He ended up not only leading or getting pole position, he led every single lap, finished the race comfortably ahead of everyone else, and was one of few drivers to actually pull off a one-stop, because he was so dominant throughout the race that he didn't need to bother stopping twice, because he didn't need to overwork his tires. Very dominant win for the McLaren driver, who ends up taking the lead in the World Drivers' Championship off his teammate Oscar Piastri, who himself ended up only finishing 5th, if memory serves me right. Well, this is the first time now that Norris is leading the championship since April, and the first time since April that Piastri has lost the lead. Couldn't have come at a better time, considering there's about 5 or 4 more rounds really of action still left, or 5 rounds of F1 action. The title can still very much go either way. Last bit of news, and this one is one that will make fans of tennis star Yannick Sinner happy. Sinner has sealed his 4th tennis title of the 2025 season by beating Alexander Zverev in the Vienna Open final. Now, what makes the win doubly impressive in some ways is the fact that Sinner was actually down a set, ended up rallying to win the next 2 sets, seal the title, and of course, well, you can't help but say that, it's picking up form just at the right time, considering the ATP finals, which is of course the year-ender tournament, is coming. He was also looking very good during the Saudi Super 6 or Super Kings, whatever thing, that was the exhibition tournament that was being played in Saudi Arabia, 6 Kings I think it was called. He looked good there as well. He comfortably breezed past Djokovic, but of course, 2 caveats there. That was an exhibition tournament. Djokovic is carrying an injury. So it's interesting to see how it is that, let's say, Sinner does as the tournament or as the year comes to an end, but he'd want to end on a high. And speaking of ending on a high, that is it from us on this edition of the Morning Wrap with Sports Today. Thank you guys so much for joining us as always. If you enjoy our work, don't forget, like, share, subscribe, tap the bell icon, follow us on social media. We're on Instagram, X and Facebook, and stay tuned through the day for more such updates from the world of sport.